Are you a project manager looking to move into product or vice versa? Or perhaps you're a business analyst thinking of your next step in your career? In this video, we are going to talk about the differences between project manager, product manager, and business analysis. It's really important that these three distinct parts of a product's life cycle are fully understood. If you're in one of these areas and just like to know more, then this video is for you. But equally, if you want to move into one of these three areas, by the end of this video, you should have a good understanding of the differences, but also which is the right fit for you. If you're new to this channel, my name's Tariq. I'm a technology and product leader at one of the world's largest investment banks. I've worked in the corporate world for 20 years, and I have been a business analyst, a project manager, and now a product leader in a large corporate. So I've been in all three positions. I understand what they do, but effectively how they interface with each other. So in this video, we're going to deep dive into it. So let's get straight into that. So on screen, hopefully you can see a diagram that I put together. Now it's a very rudimentary diagram. I was really trying to break this down into thinking about a very core flow of an organization so that you can see the differences between these three roles and how they interface. Let's talk about the diagram at a high level first, and then we'll get into the details. So firstly, at a high level, the ultimate stakeholder, I should say, is the business leader. The business leader is someone who you are accountable to for the success of a product or the success of an outcome being achieved. The business leader usually has strategic goals that they are accountable for, and by making them accountable to that, they spin up project teams, product teams to go ahead and build features, build products out that will satisfy their goal. And these could be transformation projects, these could be customer products development, finding new markets. So the business leader is the ultimate stakeholder for a project manager and a product manager. When we look at this diagram as a whole, across the three boxes in the middle here is really the engine of work getting done. So you start firstly with a MVP, which is the minimum viable product. And this is the most basic product that meets the most basic need of the customer and solves the most basic problem. If you can get this very lightweight, lean product up and running, you can find customers or test with a small group of users to understand whether it's a good fit. Then you get feedback, go through the iterations of getting the product into a better state, fixing any bugs, any sort of non-intuitive journeys, and then you move into a customer product that faces the customer. And throughout this journey, the project manager here, the product manager, and the business analyst, they all interface with the design and the engineering teams. And these are the people who would build the product out and take the feedback on and look at new ways of adapting and optimizing the product. So now you're in this cycle of the customer and the product being developed. Let's talk about the three roles in a bit more detail. So firstly, starting with the project manager. Now the project manager sees this flow as just tasks that need to be delivered by a certain time, and they need to be delivered by budget using a certain opinionated stack of resources. These could be contractors, these could be permanent team members, it could be third-party services, but these resources are instructed at the very start of the project's life cycle to then go on and help deliver what the project manager needs delivering. So it's really all about tasks and delivery management and meeting milestones and getting the product to the end. In their perspective, it's really about delivering the tasks. It's not about the value, and we'll get into that in a bit more detail, but really it's about seeing something from A to B, get it done, and then report back to the business leader where there are potential risks along that journey. Say, for example, you are reliant on a third-party provider. It could be an agency that you're working with. It could even be another team in your organization that are completely stacked up and don't have time to work on your project. As a project manager, that's a risk for you. You then feed all of these back and report into the business leader and let them know effectively red amber, or green, and this is called the RAG status of your project. It could be red, which means we're not going to meet the deadlines, there's some really severe risks here, we're blocked, or there are some budgetary constraints. It could be any of a number of things, but the red status is really the worst status. Amber means, you know, it could go either way. We could make it on time, or on budget and using all the resources we can, or it could go the other way if someone else is slipping or another team is slipping effectively. And then green meaning everything's good, it's all good. So in terms of this project management side, what we're really looking at is the tasks, the order they're being done in, and this forms a critical path. The critical path is effectively the path that is needed for the project manager to successfully do their job and get kudos for that. When the critical path is affected, it means that the project will not get delivered on time and the project will not meet the requirements that it needs to be successfully delivered. So really, in terms of this critical path, the project manager always looks at items that are on this critical path and prioritize the delivery of those. So if it's working with an engineering team and then perhaps working with a vendor product or a third-party team, they will need to work with both of these people and work out, you know, if you're a critical path item, critical path person, then I need to ensure that you are not blocked. I need to ensure that you are going to get everything you need and be able to do your job on time. So the project manager's role is to make sure all of those items are ticking away nicely, the people are working on them, the right agencies or third parties are working in the right way, and the project manager needs to know if anything is potentially going to get blocked. This all forms part of their reporting that then they report back to the business leader. Also, a project manager is focused on scope. And it's a big one. When I was a project manager, scope creep, as they call it, was one of the worst and most common things that happened to me as a project manager, was when whilst you're embarking on this project and you're making this change and you're delivering these tasks, suddenly a stakeholder wants, wouldn't it be nice if I could have this, or perhaps we should add this to the project and get this feature in, etc. But with the project manager, they need to be very firm in terms of the scope control, because the project manager's ultimate aim is to deliver on time and deliver what was agreed, not to deliver what's new and what could be nice and nice to have. So really focusing on the scope and keeping that scope creep from not happening, keeping it contained. So that's the project manager's role. So that would be a really good job for someone who is great with detail, really great at managing multiple streams, say, I would say multitasking to an extent, or having a good helicopter view of what's going on across different teams. A project manager also has to be quite directive, really understand that what's the yes and a no, put in a lot of structure. So if you're someone who can come into a team and deliver something with a lot of structure, you are the person who brings that structure in, then project manager is a good role for you, because quite often the engineers and the people working on the delivery, the project that needs to be done, will not have that structure in place, and you'll need to guide them. You'll need to put the cadences in, whether it's they are meeting up with you regularly to give progress, or they're coming to you when things are blocked. As a project manager, you need to be comfortable with putting in those processes, but then also being the person that can effectively unblock them as well. So if it means that you need to have a conversation between different teams and get them to sort out any differences or prioritize things correctly so that your project gets done on time, and that's exactly what you need to do as a project manager. So it's real oversight of the end-to-end delivery, it's putting the structure in, it's tracking all of the numbers as well, which is your resources, your budgetary constraints and your scope, and then being able to effectively communicate that to your senior stakeholders as well. There's a lot of accountability in project management, and a project manager is often the buck falls to them effectively when something is not delivered on time or is not delivered to the correct standard. It's often the project manager who is to blame in an organization or who basically is questioned on how the project went. And that's quite important to note as well. As a project manager, you need to be fully able to embrace the fact that you need to see something through. And if you think something is not going to make it through or there's going to be delays, you need to bring that to the leaders or your stakeholders as soon as possible. Set their expectations so they know that this project has gone from green to amber, could go from amber to red. As long as you keep that communication going between the business leader and the project managers and all of the teams, then the project manager's role can potentially be quite impactful as well. So that's the project manager, and it's completely different mindset to, I would say, the product manager. So let's go into the product manager in more detail. Whilst the project manager was really focused on tasks and delivery, budgets and framework, the product manager is all about solving customer problems. So really, the product manager's main stakeholder or the key person of interest to them is the customer. It's not the business leader. Really, they ultimately serve the customer. If in a pure product setting, the product manager would put themselves in the shoes of the customer and understand what the customer's pain points are, where the customer is feeling friction, where they're feeling a bit that the service has let them down or the product has let them down, or wouldn't it be nice if the product did this, as an example. That is what the product manager's role is. They are really ultimately serving the customer. So in order to do that, the product manager has to be quite empathetic, needs to understand the needs very well, and the needs could be across a very diverse demographic of personas, and you can see that word here on the product manager side of the profile, because the product manager needs to go and think about all the different types of individuals, the socio-economic backgrounds, the demographics of an individual, why they are coming to the point of where they're using the product or service that you are accountable for, and how good that service is. Does it actually suit the need of the customer? Is it doing what they want them to do? And did it do it well, or has it left them frustrated? There's a lot of emotion involved here. There's a lot of sort of connection, and there's also a lot of problem solving happening here. So a product manager would ultimately set a vision out for the product, and the vision would really be what the end state, the ultimate end state is for that product, for the customer. So it could be that the customer feels very satisfied by achieving a certain outcome, a problem being solved. That is what the product manager's vision would be. They would then go about setting out a roadmap for this product, and the roadmap would be all of the features in the order that they think would be a good order to fix and put into place and develop and launch. And by doing this, what they're going to do effectively is communicate with the customer. So where the project manager may not communicate directly with the customer, the product manager almost always does and should do in a correct product framework setting. The product manager is responsible for getting the feedback from the customer of what's worked well and what hasn't, and then feeding that back into this product loop that we have here in the middle, building out the features and then getting them to the hands of the customers quickly as well. So there's a lot of experience, there's a lot of user experience and outcomes going on here. Product managers' roles may also go into marketing and launch. So when you're getting to the point where your product is now ready for the world or ready for your internal customers, it's all about launching that out as well. And when you launch a product out, the product manager's role is really to help sell the value and really sell the features, what it is, why a customer would use that product or why they would take up a service that you have, and then work on the marketing. These aren't always things that a product manager does. In large organizations, usually you have a product marketing team and a product management team separate, but in smaller firms, you may have the product manager doing both the launch, the marketing, and also this customer feedback loop as well. So the product manager's role essentially is a very people-centric role. So if you are someone who is very good with people, understanding their needs, you're quite empathetic, but then you're also able to articulate those problems and putting them into actually getting tangible features built or a solution building from that, then this is the right role for you. Effectively, the product manager has this sort of mini CEO or sort of mini accountability where they are building something sometimes from inception, really from nothing, and that's called a 0 to 1 build, where it really feels like you built your own thing from scratch, almost like you're a startup feeling where you've got this new product that you've built out. Or it could also be that you're taking an existing large product, but you're focused on one particular area of it. So if it's a really large product, say it's like Amazon as an example, you know, large application there on your phone, but also the website, you could be responsible for the checkout. You could be responsible for just the search results or the customer review section of that feature. So in very large corporations, in large products, you can break down these features into almost sub-teams, and that is effectively how it works in those large teams. But the product manager's role really is to help get that outcome solved. Product managers also work very closely with engineering and design teams, and quite often they are the glue between these teams. So where they understand the problem, they can work with the design team to understand how to articulate and visualize that problem. But then at the same time, the engineering team here is going to build this. So effectively, engineering need to take that design and say, is it actually something we can build? Is it viable? So the product manager would sit in between these teams and really understand where they can find the common ground in terms of moving forward and really trying to get to the outcome. When the engineers are building their code or building their product and the designer doing this, it is ultimately the product manager's responsibility to say, is this achieving the outcome? Are we still solving the problem? Because quite often it's very common that when you're going through this process, you can lose sight of the customer problem and end up just building what's convenient from an engineering perspective. And you do not want that to be something that carries on throughout the product life cycle. The product manager's role really needs to always bring it back to, are we solving that problem? Is that problem being met? And can we actually add value to the customer? Is the customer gaining something from this? So the product manager is always that voice of the customer and that voice of reason there. Now moving gears, talking about the business analyst. The business analyst is quite an interesting one. It's quite often that you start in this role early on in your career. Many graduates, for example, who go into these graduate training schemes often end up in business analysis because really it's a level of detail that is best suited when you're in those earlier stages of your career. It's really less about the management of stakeholders and the emotionally intelligent work that will need to take place, where you have to manage difficult conversations when the things aren't going right. That is usually the project manager and the product manager doing those roles. The business analyst really is playing both sides of the product manager role, but also in the project manager role, really focused on requirements. If there's one word that sums up business analysis and the role of a business analyst, is formalizing requirements, is requirements. They are all about requirements management effectively. So in a deeper level, they would look at what the requirements are that need to be built. And these often are broken down into functional and non-functional requirements. Functional and non-functional requirements are important to the delivery from a project manager perspective, because the project manager would need these lists of requirements to then help break down tasks, and then those tasks are then mapped out for the project to then be delivered. So they work really closely with the business analysts and project managers together to help break down the tasks based on these requirements. And then the business analyst would work on the other side with the product manager to first understand the product, understand what we're trying to build, what it is we're trying to achieve, and then translating that into those functional and non-functional requirements, often trying to understand how we're going to measure effectively what is being built as well. There's a lot of analysis work, a lot of quantifying happening in business analysis roles, where every requirement needs to have a measure in place that they can then track effectively. So that could be if it's a website or an application, it could be the funnel for going from the landing page all the way through to a sale and a conversion in the e-commerce space as an example, or it could be just metrics in terms of uptake, how much people have clicked on a certain button, or how many people are viewing a certain product, or it could be a variety of things. But the business analyst is really focused on the granular details here, those requirements and the analysis and measures around them as well. So in terms of functional requirements are those that are effectively built into the product from an engineering perspective. So it's where you take an input, you perform some sort of operation on it, and then you get an output. Those are the functional requirements. They are basically the features of that you're building into a product. The non-functional requirements are important because these are more behavior based, and that is effectively where you're going into the realm of product management there, whereas the functional requirements are more project management. So with the functional requirements, you're really focused on what I need to deliver to get this thing working, to make this thing functional. Whereas the non-functional, you're thinking of behavior. So it could be something like the performance of the product. Is it really slow? It's not really working well for the customer. It could be knowledge. It could be documentation, for example. So we've got user guides. Do we need to train people how to use this product? And it could be things like privacy and security. Are we making it sure that the customer's data is private? Do they know that? Is it secure the way we're doing this? But all those sort of behavioral requirements that are really important to the customer, but also important to the company that are building this product to make sure they've done their due diligence. That is effectively what the business analyst also maps out. So there's a lot of knowledge there. There's a lot of knowledge in the business analysis space. And it's quite often that you start in a role like this where you're really focusing on the detail. And then when you get more comfortable as in your career, and you're getting to a more better state of maturity in terms of handling conversations, you can then move into a role like product management or project management, where the stakes can often be a lot higher and where you are effectively got greater accountability. And that is how the three roles are pitched together effectively. They really work together. So in some organizations, you can be at loggerheads between project and product management, really. So in a large bank and in many large corporates, in my current investment bank I work in, there is always going to be an element of project management. In a large corporate environment, there is always going to need this waterfall stability that sits across the entire organization. So every single portfolio, project and program need to be mapped out, and there needs to be dates, and the senior stakeholders, the executive management team, would want to know exactly when things are landing and when we're going to embark on new things. And that can only be done with a large project office effectively that looks at all the programs of work going on, and a program is made up of multiple projects. But in that large program setting, how can they then be sure that firstly the money that they're investing into that is spread properly and that we're getting the deliveries we need? Now, underneath that layer, you're often working as a product manager, trying to meet the customer's goals, get the feedback, understand the problems. So as a product manager in a large corporate, you'll need to be very flexible, working with project managers and just giving them the information they need to just roll up into reporting and getting that to the top of the chain effectively. And as a business analyst, you would work across both of those. And as a project manager, you are ultimately accountable for that delivery. So there would be many meetings that happen where you check the red, amber and green status, the RAG status of your project, but then also highlighting any project dependencies across a large program as well. So in summary, if we could break this and distill it down, the project manager is very much focused on structure and delivery. If you're someone who can come in to an organization, put in some structure for delivery, start assigning tasks, deadlines, and starting to manage risk and the detail around delivery, then that is effectively your a good role for you. If you're someone who wants to be close to the customer, wants to understand their needs, really think about solving problems and then turning that into an actual tangible product, working with design, engineering, etc., then product manager roles are good for you. Or if you're very much a detail focused individual and you're really focused on the requirements, really the detail here, and how to measure the success of those requirements, and then getting into the detail of understanding future requirements, then that's the business analyst role. There are three connecting roles, but they're three very different roles as well. So I hope that's been very beneficial for you watching this video, to see the three different roles in a bit more detail, understand the different needs there, and understand the different skill sets effectively that work across those three videos. If you want to see more content like this, then let me know, comment below, and I will create more detailed videos on this. And check out some of my other videos on this channel as well, where we're talking more about your career progression and getting you to that next level as well. I'm going to focus on product management mainly in the next few videos, and also helping you with the key soft skills to get you to the next level in your career from a leadership perspective. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.